low level on top there, and it's sitting on top of the loop, which just gives it that extra little dynamic thrash of the top of the clap. And I think that's an important part of the track. You know, a good snare clap on top really drives the track along. You know, those beats, it makes it just sound really, really powerful and drives along. Okay, so now I've got everything working very well. I've got the beats, the kick, the bass, the melody is sitting really nicely on top. I think it's important, which a lot of producers make this mistake. I was guilty in my early days. When you make all these bits, you usually kind of make a 16-bar loop of a track, and then you just cut and paste and put all those bits and make the arrangement of the track. But it's also important not to clutter the track. See what I've done here. These are all the rhythmic parts which I showed you with those drums. You know, they're all talking to each other. You'll see here. Here's the first drop, and then it comes into the track where the melody comes in. And you'll see here I've dropped away all those rhythmic parts while the melody's playing. I don't think it's necessary to have those extra parts. They're all taking up space. They're all doing something, taking up a dynamic range within the track. So it's important to remember to cut things, mute things. You know, when a melody comes in, mute certain parts of the track. You need room for that melody to come across. That's the strong part of the track. So I found here, by muting all those rhythmic parts, it was buying me that extra space for the main melody to come across, which is so important. You know, they're a very good part. And my old days, I would have left them in because I spent so much time making them. I want them going through the whole track. It's important, but you don't miss them. You know, you'll probably notice within a lot of tracks that certain things disappear and come back. When you actually start listening, that's what they're actually doing. You've got to buy space for when things come in and out. So I sacrificed those parts, even though they're so good, but they come back in later. You know, you see here's a section here near the end, when everything is calmed down, put those rhythm parts back in again. It brings back the groove of the track. People won't miss it. You know, you really think you've got to hang on to everything, but you've heard it in the intro of the track, you've kind of got into the groove, but your mind is then taken over by the melody. Your brain's so focused on the melody, you've forgotten about those rhythmic parts. So don't worry about it, mute them. You know, people won't miss them because other people's brains are focused somewhere else. So I think that's an important thing. You know, go for a track if you feel it's too busy, there's too much going on. Be really hard on yourself. Just start muting things as well. If you mute it and you can't hear it and you don't miss it, keep it muted. You know, if you mute it dynamically, something changes, something missing, the drive of the track's gone, that's an important part, so keep it in. So be really harsh on yourself, you know, just go muting stuff at your main part of your track. You don't miss it, keep it muted for that section, bring it back in later. I think that's so important. And it's always this big battle that you're playing when you're putting a track together. You think of it at an EQ range, frequency range. There's not a lot of space to play with, you know, all this stuff's taking up big, expensive parts of your frequency range. So it's important, if you don't need it, calm it down. And also another little trick which I do is with your automation, if you've got some sounds which sound so good with this lush reverb, again, reverbs take up so much space. If the melody comes in, I quite often write automation to calm down those reverbs, to pretty much switch off the reverb when the melody's going on. So the same sound's going, but I've calmed down the reverb while it's the main riff's going. When the riff's finished, automation, the reverbs come back up on that sound, and you just bought yourself some space. So little tricks like that, which I did throughout this track as well. So very, very important. Myself and the Digital Blonde are famous for our pads. We love pads. It's an important feature for us in tracks. We had a little bit of difficulty with this track because the main Oxygen melody is made up of various sections which sound like pad sounds as well. So if you add an extra layer of pads, you're just going to mask the main melody, which is something that we don't want to do. So we managed to get the pads in. We had to get pads in, otherwise a song's not complete without pads. We've got the middle 8 section, which is like a brassy trumpet sound, which is from the original. So we put all our lush pads over this section. We managed to get away some secret ones near the end as well, but here you'll see this is where we save the pad moment. Again, I've done my famous layering. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers of pads to make them nice, big. You've got different sections of layer. You've got the big, thick, wide pads. Then you've got some kind of choir ones. You've got some sort of brassy kind of sounding ones as well. And again, it's just making them all fit together. Luckily, the trumpet sound is such a tight, brassy sound. There's plenty of space to play with, so that was an ideal point to put the pads. And then naturally, that fitted there, and we were trying to put them with the main melody, and it just didn't work. Again, when you're making a track, it's all about experimenting. You know, you do have a picture in your head of how you want it to happen, but it doesn't always pan out that way. So, you know, I really wanted to put the pads in with the oxygen melody, but tried it didn't happen. So you know, you just have to think ahead, think, okay, if you want some kind of pads in there, where can I put them? And again, I put them in the middle 8 section there, and it worked out perfectly. So that's where we got our magic blonde and Fleming sounding pads. So here you see all the different layers of pads. So this is the first layer. You'll probably be familiar with myself and blonde. This is our favourite pad sounding. This came from the ES2 actually, which is fantastic for making pads. We go to the next up. It's kind of in a similar way that I was showing you with the oxygen melody, how we lay the pads on top of each other. You hear there's more of a glassy sounding pad, because the other ones were very rich sounding. I tailed off the top end of the EQ to give room for this more glassy sounding, so the layer would work on top of each other. And the pads then progress. As I've named them here, the atmosphere, which is fantastic for pads. You hear a nice lower tone, some depth, lower tone, a graininess to them. So that we heard from the first two layers, we had some glassy sounding ones, we had very rich wide sounding. Now we've got that nice grainy sounding, which we had space for. It's more kind of natural sounding. Here we go, more kind of natural, as if it's from an orchestra, sounding very, very nice again from the omnisphere. And then the choirs, which will sit on top when it catches up. There we go. Let's wake it up. So it's like this is a boys' choir, which is you can't beat choirs in a trance track. It wouldn't be a trance track if there was no choirs in there. Yeah, you got to get your hands in the air. So then the choirs just seem to naturally sit on top of pads. So then we've got it's not from the original actually, and we just felt the track needed a little section in there to give a little nod to trance. This part is written by us, it's not in the original, and we just thought just added a little bit of something in the middle of it to take you away. You get your heads down, it's an aggressive acid kind of sounding moment, then it goes back into the oxygen melody, so it's kind of, your head's down moment, you think, oh yes, it's kind of remembering, this is a trance track, this is like serious stuff, and then it goes back into the melody, so it's kind of like the darkness, then the other side is the light, which I like playing with ideas like that. Many of the tracks you'll hear, we have a real mad, dark moment, but then on the other side you're going to get your bright candy. So it's messing with your mind. That's how I make music for a dance floor, and the dance floor out there. I want to play with people's heads, and this is what we had to achieve in this track. Just had one of those little moments in there. So again, it's more Fleming layers. I don't always do layers, but this track particularly has to be full of layers, but they just work. And there's some nice 303 sounding moments in there, and there's also some aggressive sound which I've made by putting stuff through, like a guitar amp distortion, something like that. Just gives it a little bit of nastiness. There's no melodies playing, there's no strings, so there's plenty of room to play with. You just got the kick bass percussion, and you've got this massive amount of middle room which you can put these aggressive sounds in, which I've done here, which you'll hear. There they all are, all working together. There's the 303 growing, it's doing various filter changes. There's a nasty kind of guitar sounding thing, it's just middle area, it's just punching away, driving like mad. What I often do, which I've actually done with these sounds, I'll bust them to their own separate channels, just so I've got a little bit more control over the sounds together, because quite often when you got